Fabrice the Artist here, back with another video, and today I'm going to be critiquing your guys' art. I'll mention right off the bat, I'm not going to be mentioning who the artists are just because I don't know who all the artists are, because I saved all the pictures to my phone so that I could critique them on camera while looking at my phone. Next time I'll remember who the artists were, but for now you guys are just going to all have to watch this video and check to see if your drawing is critiqued or not. Let's dive right into it. First up, we got a beautiful portrait of a female. Now, the first thing about this one that I noticed is the proportions are very, very good. It's very realistic. However, I think maybe the paper is a little bit too texturized for the effect that you might be looking for, as you can see the texture on the page over the cheeks and all that quite readily. Another thing that stands out to me is the values could be a little bit more accurate. The brighter spots could be a little bit brighter, and the darker spots could be a little bit darker to create a little bit more contrast. For example, this hair looks to me like it's supposed to be black hair, but because you're using what looks like to be graphite, the darkest really that you can get is a dark gray. So it's not creating that really realistic contrasting effect in capturing those values accurately. Okay, so the proportions are great, the details are great, but pay a little bit more closer attention to the values. This one is a lot of the same things that I said earlier apply to this one. So the values could be a little bit more accurate. The proportions aren't too bad, okay, but I think you need to spend a lot more time shading or blending in some of the shading on the cheek, okay? So it looks a little blotchy on some of the areas of the face, okay? Now that would make it look by itself a lot better, just cleaning that up. The hair doesn't look very realistic because it's a weird gray color, a weird gray value, okay? You wanna get that nice and dark, get those eyelashes, get those eyebrows, get the line, the shadows in between the lips, get that darker, right? Don't be afraid to play around with some charcoal, some different tools. Maybe, I don't know what kind of graphite pencil you're using here. Maybe you're using a very hard pencil that doesn't appear to be very dark, but like I've said in the past, even if you're using an AP pencil, an AP graphite pencil, the darkest that you're gonna get is a dark gray, okay? So try playing around with the values a little bit more, fix up the face, clean up those blotches a little bit, and it'll be better the next time. This one is pretty friggin' sweet, okay? Now, I'm a huge Breaking Bad fan, so I was, probably gonna pick this one to critique. Now, I don't have a whole lot negative to say about this. This is an awesome drawing. I would say the background is a little bit blotchy. It looks to me like you used maybe some graphite powder, or you used a graphite pencil to create the background and then blend it in with a tissue paper. So your background looks the way my backgrounds did a few years ago, which is leaves some room for improvement in my opinion. To me, the weakest part of this drawing is the background, and that would in itself make it look way better. Now, the best parts of this drawing, the values are spot on. I know exactly what reference picture you used for this. I almost drew this one myself actually, and you nailed it. The picture is super rough looking, like the graininess of this picture, reference picture itself, is exactly like this drawing appears. And the values are spot on. So the coat appears to be a jet black. Now I'm assuming you either used charcoal on this or you used a really dark graphite pencil and probably increased the contrast on a photo editing software, okay? Which is fine, but a black like this is unachievable with graphite. Just saying. Great job. Now this one appears to be quite suffocating. I friggin' hope to God this is not a self-portrait of you suffocating yourself in a bag, or I hope this isn't one of your friends, or Jesus. I wouldn't want to be the muse in this one. Let me just tell you that right off the bat. But having said that, this is an amazing drawing. The proportions are spot on, the values are spot on. There's some areas here, like in the bottom right, in the corners a little bit, where I think you kind of rushed some of the blending a little bit. This could be a little bit more fine-tuned. The details here look phenomenal. Like I said, the values are great, the darks are nice and dark, and the bright spots that are supposed to be bright are nice and bright. The parts that you don't think matter as much, like the little corners that the eye doesn't focus on, make sure that you blend those in a little bit better. Okay, but other than that, great job. As you guys know, I drew Mike Tyson as well. The main thing to me that stands out about this one, man, is the proportions honestly couldn't be any worse. The proportions are awful. Okay, now you spent a shit ton of time on the details, it looks like. Like, you got some of these details pretty friggin' good. Like the blurry spots in the corner, you got a couple on the cheek, you got some water droplets there. I see some good points here, that's really good. But all that means nothing if the proportions are as off as what they are here, okay? So I would say work on your proportions, whether it's just using a grid, or honestly, I've never personally used a grid. However, you know, that's gonna come with practice. The most important things are gonna be getting the values accurate and the proportions accurate, and details come last. Okay, so you're focusing way too much on the details and leaving much room for improvement on some of these other things. Like the glove is super blotchy. You need to blend that in way better and get those proportions down. But I will say, the values are good. Like the hair looks nice and dark. The shadow under the neck here looks phenomenal. The details on the lips, the chin, I really like the droplets on the cheek here. So you really did an amazing job with that. And the background to me looks pretty weak. It looks to me like, at first glance to me, it looks like you're using a very cheap willow charcoal. I can almost guarantee that this was not General's charcoal sticks or charcoal pencil, because it looks like a very cheap charcoal. So first thing, get rid of that willow charcoal. It's garbage. Just get a better charcoal pencil and just throw out that. Next, this kind of looks like a young Joaquin Phoenix. I'm not too sure. However, first thing that jumps out to me is it looks extremely flat. Okay, so it looks like almost like a minimalistic drawing. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be an attempt at photorealism or not. I'm seeing some use of some cross hatching. It looks like it looks to me like you really rushed some of the shading on the forehead here. The hairline is way too straight. It's completely unrealistic. It's not a perfect straight line like that. You know, take a better look at the forehead. There's no shading here on the forehead. Now, this might be something that you were going for in terms of like a minimalist drawing effect, perhaps. I really like the sweater, nice and black. Really dark, right? I don't know if you use like an ink or a charcoal pencil or something like that, but really good job getting a solid black sweater there. The proportions aren't bad, however, it looks like a little bit like the jawline is a little bit out of proportion. The forehead here is sticking out a little bit too much. Now this will just come with practice, okay? Like just trying to get the proportions a little bit more accurate. And just take your time with the shading on the side of the head here. I would try to pay a little bit more close attention to some of the details and shading on the forehead instead of leaving it completely blank, okay? Nice job. Next we have Mandalorian. This one's really cool. This reminds me of some of the Dragon Ball Z drawings that I used to do when I was a kid. This is really cool. I like the highlighted, like the background, how it's contouring the figure of Mando, which is great. I like the, I think this gentleman here has sent me this drawing a few months ago, if I remember correctly. The first picture that he sent me, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, the editing on this is looking a lot better. It's looking more black and white instead of like a gross looking beige, like a cheap camera type look. So I think I told him to turn the saturation down or turn the highlights up or change the color of the drawing so that it actually looks more like the actual drawing instead of a shittier version of it. The proportions are great. The values aren't too bad. I think you could go a little bit darker in some of the darkest spots, like between the legs, the helmet here, some of the cracks between the gloves and so forth. And I would just try maybe blending in some of those lines a little bit, okay? So it does look quite realistic, which is great, but it does look a little bit unrefined, okay? So you might want to use like a brush to kind of blend that in a little bit, or maybe use a small blending stump. Or sometimes something that works actually really good is you can achieve a nice blended in effect with just building up some of these shades a little bit more gradually, so that you don't have to do much blending at all and you don't get this unrefined kind of rough appearance, which I don't think you were going for, okay? Good job. This one, I really wanted to include this one because this one is a phenomenal drawing, okay? This is a French artist and he's very, very good. Now, like, this is an incredible drawing, super realistic. Like, the details under the eye here are amazing. I don't know how big this drawing is. Like, I think it might be like an 11 by 14 or kind of a smaller drawing. And to have this kind of detail in a drawing like that size, if I remember correctly, it's not very big, is very impressive. Like, you know, some of these the details under the eyes, like the little textures under the wrinkles under the skin, under the eyelid, amazing. The values are spot on. Everything here is really good. My first thing I would tell you, man, is draw bigger, right? Like, you got insane potential. Like, your drawings are really, really, really good. But if you want to take your art to the next level, and something that took my art to the next level is draw on a bigger paper. I'm telling you, this paper size is 100% holding you back, okay? So I don't have much to tell you here. You're on the right path. Your drawings are amazing. Keep going. Go bigger with your drawings and you will excel to new heights, I promise you. Okay, this looks quite realistic. Now, to me, again, the background is very weak. It looks, again, to me like very blotchy, cheap willow charcoal. Right, you guys got to stop using willow charcoal. Throw it out. It's garbage. This looks great. It looks to me like you used a ton of General's charcoal white, if I'm correct. Now, in my opinion, I think you probably relied on it a little bit too much. I see a little bit too much blue here, so that to me is evidence of relying a little bit too much on charcoal white, General's charcoal white pencil, and you should be using a Tombow Mono Zero eraser to erase some of these white details in instead, okay? So what you can do is cover a little spot on the page with some charcoal powder and then use that as your foundation to erase some of those white hairs in with this beautiful tool right here. So great job. The values are great. You know, the blacks are very black, which is great. If you did use a white Posca acrylic paint pen for the whiskers, you know, that's an acceptable use of that tool. However, again, I would suggest if you can, erase those in, but I understand sometimes you can't erase in charcoal that precisely and not have it get that white, okay? So at the very least, I would erase those whiskers in with the Tombow first and then go in with the Posca paint pen after. Okay, so great job. Fix that background though. Now it looks to me like you're stuck in your head here or stuck in someone else's head. But one thing that I'm not a huge fan of at all is when people edit the background to be perfectly white. Like, this to me looks too photoshopped. And you can tell when I zoom in here, I can tell that the space between the hair is still smudged, like the color of the background would be, and then where the hair would be, where the outline of the hair is, it's completely white. So it's kind of obvious that like they whitened the background using a Photoshop app or something, which, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of. It just kind of looks a little bit unnatural and digital art almost, like, okay. So the proportions here are great. The values here are great. This concept looks interesting. I don't really know what you're trying to convey here, but interesting concept. I would say the hair on the boy is a little bit unnatural looking. I see that you actually drew around the white highlights of the hair to create those white highlights. Again, this is not the right way to do that, or it's at least it's going to be way harder to achieve this. What you want to do is create the hair entirely dark, and then where there's light spots, erase them in once again with this tool, the Tombow Mono Eraser. Okay, so great job. The values were great. The proportions are great. It's a very interesting concept. This isn't really something that I'm particularly into, but I think it's pretty interesting. But I'm also not really a fan of editing the background like that, okay? Although that's just my personal preference. There's nothing wrong with doing that. A lot of people like that look. A lot of high-level artists edit their pictures exactly like this. I just don't really like it, okay? Good job. And what the hell am I looking at here? I don't know what's going on with this girl's facial expression. Where did you find this picture? Anyway, it almost looks, it looks really, really faded away. It almost looks like you drew this on like wood or something. Like it looks extremely, extremely rough. Now, the proportions don't look too bad. To me, the values look very weak. You know, the darkest values here are a light gray almost. So it's very unrealistic just because of that. I will say this is extremely grainy. This would look a lot better if you could smooth that out a little bit better and create a little bit more darker areas. So like the inside of the mouth is like a medium tone. It should be nearly black, okay? The background probably should be black. I'm not sure what pencils you used here, but try exploring with some darker shades, okay? Having said that, I do really like the clean cut nature of this. I think you probably put a tape and then removed it when you were done. That's a nice touch. Good job. And I really like the fact that it looks like you use an eraser to erase those individual white hairs over the face. So good job doing that. Okay, but you might want to look into getting a different texture paper, because to me, I think it's taking away from the quality of your work. And I'm not too sure who this is. However, you did an amazing job with some of these tattoo details. Again, the hair, to me, it looks like you drew it with a pencil individually, leaving the white highlights of the hair empty, which to me is a mistake. Again, use that Tombow Mono eraser to erase those in instead. That would make it look, it almost looked like his hair is made out of wool. Like he looks like a Teddy Ruxpin doll or something, right? Like you got to clean that up, right? So to me, the hair is by far the weakest part of this drawing, but I think everything else on this drawing is amazing. So great job. But one tip, to me it looks like the background was done with graphite maybe, and it looks like you literally drew it with a pencil individually, painstakingly drawing the whole background with a pencil. That's what it looks like to me. It looks good, but I think it would have been a lot better to just use like some charcoal powder with a brush. You could have done this background in like 30 minutes or less, and it would have looked a lot smoother than this. Now, I'm not sure if that's what the effect you were going for, but I do like it, but I'm just trying to give you an easier way to try to do that background, save yourself some time, and make it maybe look a little bit better as well. And also, little things that take away from this as well is the top part of this drawing is not completely straight. So you could have probably used some tape to edge it off so that it was perfectly square, kind of like the previous drawing. And, you know, you could have the most super realistic drawing, but then if the background is like crooked and it's not a perfect rectangle, it just makes it look unprofessional. It takes away from it, okay? So fix the hair, use the Tombow, use a brush on the background instead. You'll save yourself a ton of time and look way better, and make sure that the outline of the background and the overall dimensions are straight. The outline is straight, okay? Great job, amazing job on the details and the values and the proportions. Anyway, that concludes the video for today. I'm sorry I didn't get to all the videos. I got over 100 submissions, so I've got a ton of pictures for future videos, and I'll be doing these pretty often because I think they're quite informative and they're super fun for me to do. Okay, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys learned a thing or two. Stay tuned for the next critique video in case that I'm going to be critiquing your video next. I've got a ton of pictures left to go through, so I probably will. Okay, subscribe to my tutorials on Patreon. Okay, buy my prints on Etsy. Subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification bell if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in that next video. Peace.